Awesome. Thank you so much, Zainab. Distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our attendees joining us from all over the world, those online as we're streaming live on our Y20 pages. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. As we all know, the coronavirus has and is still disrupting a lot in terms of business, in terms of work, and to the smallest bits of how we live. I mean, talk about shaking hands, giving hugs, or even how we talk to each other. And yet there still lies an opportunity within that. Here in Africa, the impact has been felt in terms of economic shocks. And of course, a sharp rise in unemployment among young people. Now, I would like us to think about this conversation as an opportunity to rebuild and reimagine new ideas for our future. And of course, when we talk about the future in Africa, it's one that includes the youth that make up almost 70% of the continent. What we hope is that this workshop or this session or this conversation we're having today will catalyze our collective imagination and ideas and help us find solutions to some of Africa's problems through shared experiences with our panelists, with our viewers, and those joining us will be sending in the questions as we proceed with the conversation. My name is Maggie Omotesi. I work with BBC Africa, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm about to become an agripreneur. But to kick off this session, let's hear from the Director General of UNIDO, Mr. Leong, to give the opening remarks.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to address this event as we discuss how we can create favorable conditions for young African women and men to live, work, and thrive by engaging in the agriculture and agribusiness sectors. Despite the many challenges arising from COVID, we remain positive about the opportunity to build back better as we introduce market innovation and take advantage of the technological advancement for aspiring entrepreneurs and the existing agribusiness MSMEs. Youth are our present and our future. They not only have a transformative impact on all aspects of societies, be it in the economic, social, cultural, political spheres, and they are likely to positively frame future generations. Let us also not forget that Africa's population is the most youthful in the world, with 60% of its citizens below the age of 25, representing a powerful agent of change and a force for sustainable economic development. We therefore need to ensure that we work together to put in place effective policies and mechanisms to benefit estimated 450 million young people that will make up Africa's labor force in 2030. Engaging young people through employment and entrepreneurship is a key part of UNIDO's core mandate, with the ambition of expanding the social and economic potential of youth through the inclusive, competitive, and most importantly, sustainable economy. In this context, UNIDO is committed to working with its partners to contribute to the efforts to ensure that the needs of young women and men in Africa can be met. This is why UNIDO and the FAO have joined forces to design and develop the Opportunities for Youth in Africa, OYA program, a joint large-scale intervention in 6 pilot countries: Cape Verde, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Kenya, Tunisia, and Zambia, with the ambition to expand to other African countries in the near future. OYA seeks to strengthen value addition by promoting an ecosystem approach conducive to economic growth and the creation of quality jobs on and off farm to foster the development of a vibrant Africa entrepreneur community so that any young person with a good business idea can pursue his or her journey as a successful entrepreneur. We are also working at the same time with the national, regional, and international private sector partners and skill development institutions to ensure that the demand for skilled workers can be met by qualified young people. Our partnership with FAO on this flagship program strengthens the delivery of each technical agency and allows us to collectively achieve a much larger impact. I would like to conclude with a collective call to action for strategic, technical, and financial partners to join us as we roll out the OYA program to promote better prospects for young women and men in Africa. We hope today's conversation will be a constructive and insightful one, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director General. Definitely some of the things he has emphasized is helping the youth, supporting them financially, but also creating policies that favor them. There is absolutely no doubt that agriculture, can be used to leverage on development on the African continent. After all, it employs about 65 to 70% of the African workforce. So I'm putting down some of these statistics to give us a base, that leads us into the conversation. About 90% of the continent's livelihoods also depend on this, but it accounts for about a quarter of the continent's GDP, and this is according to the World Bank. Now, at the core of this session is also economic integration and inclusion. After all, we are talking about the AfCFTA, the biggest continental free trade agreement signed across the continent. But if we don't have the right policies, are we able to move forward with some of these things that we're pushing forward? But most importantly, there is an urgent need to facilitate and accelerate efforts to create jobs for young African women and men by supporting the development of agribusiness and fostering agricultural entrepreneurship through leveraging public and private sector investments in agriculture. That's why we have policymakers on the panel, we have donors, we have entrepreneurs, we have those who support farmers. They go on ground and have to interact with these particular farmers. Now, it's my huge pleasure and privilege to be steering this amazing session, and I'm excited to present to you our esteemed panelists. If it was a physical conference, I would ask you to clap your hands as we welcome them on stage. But since it's virtual, I'd like to kindly ask you to give them a virtual welcome as I introduce them to you. Joining us from Guinea-Conakry is His Excellency Mr. Gabriel Katis, the Minister of Investments and PPPs, the Republic of Guinea. Now, he is the head of the department responsible for the design, development, and implementation of government policy in the field of investments and public-private partnerships since May 2018. He's also the Commissioner General for Guinea for the Universal Exhibition, which will take place in Dubai in 2021. But furthermore, Mr. Katis coordinates the design and implementation of the Colombe and Luz Islands Master Plan as part of the Greater Conakry Vision 2040. Previously, he was the General Manager of the Agency for the Promotion of Private Investments from February 2014 to May 2018. In his capacity, he also served as the permanent secretary of the Presidential Council for Private Investments and Public-Private Partnerships. But before being appointed, he was CEO of APIP. As CEO of APIP, he was senior manager at the Bank of New York in London, responsible for risk and capital management and reporting for self-assessment and prudential supervision in Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. Previously, he held the position of vice president in the portfolio management department at the State Bank's headquarters in New York. And from Italy, we're joined by Mr. Maurizio Bonavi. He's a senior expert, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Italy. He's also a senior expert at the Unit of Strategies, Global Processes and Multilateral Organizations of the Directorate General for Development Cooperation in the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, has worked as a CTA of the project promoting youth employment through entrepreneurship and enterprise creation in vulnerable regions. Those included Tunisia, where they funded together with the USAID and Italy. He was a former director of the Italian Cooperation Office of the Italian Embassy in Tunis, covering Libya, Morocco, and in Cote d'Ivoire, covering Burkina Faso, Liberia, Niger, and Sierra Leone. He brings a lot of expertise, especially working in developing countries. Mr. Ken Shower joins us from Cote d'Ivoire in Abidjan. He's a Malawian national, a senior economist at the ILO's regional office from Africa in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, and a member of the ILO's research department. He supports the development and implementation of policy frameworks, leads the work on future of work, and coordinates regional research for the African region. His research interests include the economics of labor markets, saving the investment, industry and trade, date, the growth environment nexus, and agricultural policy. And I'm so excited because we're talking about reimagining the COVID-19 pandemic and getting youth, included in our policies as we move forward, supporting them with skills. And this, I am so looking forward to what Ken has to share with us. His current research is also on health shocks and labor market outcomes. And prior to joining the ILO, he worked for a number of international organizations, including the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Commission and the AU. Miss Fatoumata Diarra Suba is the co-founder and managing partner at Africa Energy Connect and a member of UNFGCY. She is an Ivorian economy strategist with over 8 years of professional experience acquired in the private and public sector and international organizations. She was a member of the OECD team, which undertook the project assessing the economic contribution of labor migration in developing countries as countries of destination, along with the ILO. So the project was implemented in 10 developing countries: Argentina, Costa Rica, Cote d'Ivoire, the Dominican Republic, Ghana, Kazakhstan, Nepal, Rwanda, South Africa, and Thailand. Fatoumata is also a member of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency within the UN Major Group of Children and Youth, which is a platform for youth to channel their actions and voices in the energy sector with emphasis on renewable energy resources. Aside from her involvement in the energy sector, she also provides strategic consulting for small businesses based in Cote d'Ivoire operating in the mobility and fintech area. There's so much to uncover with Fatoumata, especially in terms of working with startups and how solar or these technology innovations are helping farmers to develop the sector. Mr. João Paulo Alves is a project coordinator at the Brazil Africa Institute. He is engaged with civil society in the promotion of political, economic, and social approximation of Brazil and African countries through the realization of events, research, publications, and capacity building. He oversees the Institute's activities such as the Brazil Africa Forum, the Youth Technical Training Program, the Online Professional Learning, and the Fellowship Program on South-South and Triangular Cooperation. Mr. Calvin Jodisi, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Ascenti Africa, is a communication, business development, and entrepreneurship training on youth in agribusiness. He has founded the startup Campus Limited, a company that helps young entrepreneurs and innovators take their businesses to the next level. Having worked in various entrepreneurship projects and other sectors, he also excels at bringing people together and developing professional relations for a successful collaboration and to achieve optimal results. And hence, he runs the annual Africa Summit on Entrepreneurship and Innovation Annual Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And for those joining us online, welcome, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It's so great to have you as we proceed with this conversation on youth inclusion in agriculture. I'd like to start with you, Honorable Minister Curtis. It's been more than a year since the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we've had lockdowns, lots of businesses closed, youth unemployment on the rise, as I've mentioned before. But what challenges and opportunities exist for the young people, especially on the African continent?
Well, thank you very much for this introduction, and say hello to all my fellow panelists and those that are following us. I must say that COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise. Obviously, it has wreaked havoc in different communities in our different countries, but it has also forced us to look inward because we've realized that never we could have. I mean, I was a risk manager in a previous life, as you mentioned, and never in all our, we used to do scenarios, and never in our scenarios you had a pandemic where it forced everyone, no planes would go anywhere, the whole world would just stop. Never in our wildest dream would have thought that this could have been possible, that everyone was going to stay put, and you have to work from home and do all these contingency plans. For countries such as ours that are developing, it really forced us to look inward and to see, okay, what can we do best? Because we just realized how much we rely a lot on the outside. One particular example is the vaccine availability. Only 1% of the vaccine that is needed in Africa is produced on the continent. 1%. And the same thing also in our agricultural, in our product, our food. We need to be able to produce locally, because we've seen the inflation has been imported, because it cost us more to import food stuff than it used to be a year and a half ago. So that forced us to look inwards and to seek our own solutions adapted to our own realities. And it made the COVID-19 made it more urgent than ever, because we've seen what has happened, and we don't want to be stuck in the same position, the same predicament for the next pandemic, if the next pandemic arises, which I think it will, with how the world is going. So we need really to look inwards and to find our own solutions. And I'll be happy to talk about what can we do to speed up the development, the economic development, and specifically in the agricultural sector for our young people.
Thanks a lot. Ken, coming from ILO, I know you released research recently about the high numbers of unemployment across the continent, globally actually, as in regards to COVID-19. Of course, lots of communities found ways to support one another, providing food, and rethinking ways to survive. But what lessons, especially with your research, have you learned about youth inclusivity, but also promoting food security in Africa widely?
Thanks so much. Yes, it has been a lesson learning process, this COVID crisis. And what I would want to say is that the major lesson that I would want to highlight here is that the hardest hit in this have been people who have been working in the informal economy. And our young women and men in Africa tend to be there. They are overrepresented. 90% of our young men and women are actually in the informal economy. And that lesson itself tells us that we should do something. And I want to agree with His Excellency Curtis, that we should look inwards. We should then see what should we do to ensure that this does not replicate, that this does not happen again. So to me, our most important things should be, how do we turn these lessons, these challenges, into opportunities? How do we ensure that the youth in another pandemic that might come, or the informal economy workers in another pandemic that might come, will actually not be necessarily the hardest hit? How do we ensure that Africa, our continent, is not going to be hit so much that it is a pity to think that we cannot even produce enough vaccines, that our people are actually waiting for others to do it? Maybe it has to talk to issues of regional integration there, issues of producing some of these things right in the region, issues of ensuring that the youth are part of the development process. You mentioned, Maggie, that there's a very high percentage of the youth in Africa. Africa is a young continent. We must ensure that we put strategies that actually support the youth. So the best or important lesson we have learned from this crisis is that those who get to be hardly hit are those working in the informal sector, and the youth are overrepresented, over 90% in that sector. Thank you.
Just bring in entrepreneurs in here. Now, I'd like to start with Fatmata. I mean, there's been a conversation around that COVID-19 has reminded us that we are all equal in every possible way. You've worked across the continent, of course, it's been over a year now. How do you feel? Do you feel like there is need to rethink some of the policies now that we actually have policymakers on this panel?
Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to say after being operating for 1 year with my company, African Energy Connect, we were able to engage with local farmers and advise them on how they could enhance their productivity, but leveraging from agricultural mechanization technologies, operating on solar energy, sensitizing them on how using clean and safe technologies such as solar water pumps could contribute to ecological and environmental improvements. And so obviously, because of the pandemic, we were set to test a pilot on bringing solar water pumps in one of the farms that we visited, but we had to postpone, first for health-related reasons, but mostly due to not being able to raise enough funding. So on that aspect, I would like to point out that the COVID pandemic has worsened the issue related to funding and access to capital for small businesses, which is one of the biggest challenges that we face as young entrepreneurs. Following the pandemic, we had many small businesses who had to shut down completely, while some are trying to sustain their business despite the insufficient resources, and they are also confronted with a set of risks that cannot be supported by local financial institutions. Especially youth-led businesses are more at risk because they are not able to provide the guarantees or meet the requirements set by local financial institutions. So unfortunately, there aren't strong financing mechanisms specifically tailored for youth entrepreneurs to facilitate their access to capital. And most funding opportunities are limited, very limited, or even very competitive. And investors are not willing to risk their resources on new ventures. So they often prioritize companies that have been established for many years. And this can be very discouraging for young entrepreneurs. So I hope that we'll be able, since we have policymakers in the panel, to see how we can address these challenges. Thank you.
I'm just going to bring back Honorable Minister Kaj's Fatmata because I don't want to forget this part to answer a little bit of your question. Are there ways of rethinking public-private partnerships, especially when it comes to agribusiness, Honorable Minister? And would you like to share some of those with us?
Yeah, you talk about public-private partnerships? Yeah, okay. One way that we're doing it, first, we have to create a legal and regulatory framework that's conducive to entrepreneurship in agriculture for the youth, make it easier for them to be able to set up. We've reduced, for example, creating a company is going to cost $10, make the process easier, show them examples of people who have worked in agriculture that have succeeded. So we've held a number of forums where we show example of success, and people are very very candid about what it took them to arrive where they've arrived. In terms of public-private partnership, we've set up a bank, a specific bank to help fund youth entrepreneurs, whereby the youth will, we still require the youth to come up with initial capital, and the bank would loan them money, and the state will give them a subsidy, the equal amount. For example, if it's 10 million Guinean franc, which is about, let's say, $1,000, the youth come with $1,000 in capital, the bank lend them $1,000, and the state will give them $1,000 in subsidy in that order. All of that, we're looking for ways to provide them with opportunities. The second thing that we are doing is that, you have these huge conglomerate or huge companies that are investing in agriculture. So we are requiring them, if they're investing, for example, on 1,000 hectares, we say, okay, 10% of that, so about 100 hectares, you need to set aside for young and women entrepreneurs, where you will be accompanying them to make sure that they can also produce on their behalf. We did that, for example, we have a unit that's doing oil-based cashew oil. So as part of that project, that's what we put in place to make sure that we have this element of local content, but as well as projects to enable, to help young entrepreneurs. And we also have a local content law whereby, number of percentage of contracts of work that has to be done by the youth. And in terms of we have major mining companies here, and we're saying, okay, if you to feed your employees the food stuff that you are buying, you need to provide the markets. You need to provide market access to young entrepreneurs. We do the same thing also for hotels and the different businesses that are operating here, to provide market also for the youth. That's one way we're working with the private sector to encourage youth entrepreneurship in agriculture. We have also other program. I can go on and on, but with the UN, we have the Youth Connect program that I'm sure you're aware of. Those are also programs that we have in place to support and to help youth entrepreneurship in agriculture.
Thanks, Honorable Minister. I'd like to bring in Maurizio. You've worked extensively with a lot of African countries, but also in terms of helping funding, especially startups and entrepreneurs, not just in Africa, but globally. What opportunities do you foresee as we rebuild our economies from the coronavirus pandemic, but also especially for the young entrepreneurs in agribusiness in Africa?
So many thanks, Maggie. First of all, let me thank the organizers also of OIA and Y20. So I'm happy to be here. And concerning what you asked me, I'm quite, I've listened with very carefully with what have said my previous colleagues. In particular, I appreciated a lot what Mr. Minister Curtis has said. And I would like to say that concerning us from the donor point of view, the Italian cooperation is remodulating its own strategy. So in order to find, as said the previous panelist, to turn challenges into opportunities. So we have to face the COVID pandemic and to find. So we have we are going to remodulate our strategies, our programs. But in fact, I think that we have to take the opportunities of this COVID pandemic for youth. So according to my experience, I have said that I see that in Africa, so I've been working in Africa and in non-Africa, the last year, particularly in Tunisia, in a program helping youth to create their own enterprises, and I have to say that most of them were in agriculture and agribusiness, because we were working in rural areas in the southern regions of Tunisia. So I think that this pandemic will give the opportunity to change our point of view, to strengthen the ICT capacities, for example, both from the institutional point of view and also for the recipient, for the beneficiaries. So that's why we're going to see. We don't have to be pessimists, but we have to try to find and also to remodulate our kind of program. For example, I have seen that the program I was working in Tunisia, now we have to work a lot with the computer and the youth in rural areas. For example, young women and people and boys, they don't have the facility to use to have a computer, to have a good internet connection. So that's why I think that we are working at Italian Cooperation, not only at my ministry, because at my ministry, my Director General is in charge for strategy and for policies, whether the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation is in charge for the implementation. And we are working a lot with the international organizations like UNIDO, FAO, IFAD, and other ones involved in agriculture and agribusiness to find another kind of helping youth in order to achieve the objectives of the Agenda 2030. So thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. I want to bring in João Paulo. Brazil is not, I mean, we have quite similar experiences, but most importantly, agriculture plays a very important role in Brazil, contributing about 25% to the country's GDP. And it would be nice to hear from you in terms of experiences from what has, probably what has successfully happened in Brazil. What lessons can we draw, and where can we put the focus moving forward to involve young people into the sector?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the space to contribute here. I thank you all for the invitation at UNIDO and FAO. And I think that there are many good experiences in Brazil that can be used not as systems that should be adopted without change in the African context, but that can be shared and it can contribute to the construction of demand-driven and local solutions in African countries. Well, South-South cooperation and the idea of exchanging technologies and knowledge between Brazilian and African counterparts, it should involve first and foremost horizontality. It should not involve any sorts of conditions, and it shouldn't involve any sorts of patronizing behavior by both sides. So the idea is that we have here in Brazil a strong experience, and this is well known in all over the world. We have a strong experience in the development of the agricultural sector, but in Brazil particularly, we had a history of long and exploring colonial era, in which we inherited a condition of inequality that reflected itself in the field as well. So Brazil developed over the years an experience to include smallholder farmers, and this especially affects the youth and agriculture and agribusiness activities by sort of splitting the approach that it had towards agribusiness as a large-scale export-led enterprise, and smallholder farmers and youth and gender empowerment in rural areas to another extent. So basically all of the policies inside Brazil, and this reflects to the regional and local levels as well, reflect this division of logic between these two different demands, which have many different challenges and have many different necessities to be addressed as well. So, for instance, in Brazil, the inclusion of youth in rural areas and the overarching value chain of agricultural development and the rural extension and rural credit is done, for instance, by providing subsidized credit, as it is done in Guinea-Conakry, by connecting people to low carbon emission agricultural services, and especially by connecting locally the value chains that produce food and the value chains that produce subsistence for local communities through, for instance, school meal programs. You had a very strong effort here when Dr. José Graziano, the former Director General of FAO, was in Brazil, in a ministry in Brazil, to promote the integration of cash transfer programs, food production programs, and school feeding programs to integrate a value chain that created at the same time opportunity for youth to be employed in rural areas, opportunity for food to be produced locally, and opportunity for revenue and employment to boom in this more vulnerable areas. So I think that the focus should be on not leaving the youth behind, not only in the short term by providing them with the necessary credit and employment opportunities, by creating this sort of mitigator programs that integrate these value chains and generate consumption and production and revenue in a circular basis, but also not leaving them behind in terms of integrating them and giving the skills for them to actually develop more scale to their enterprises. So providing them with the digital skills, coping skills, entrepreneurial skills, so that agricultural sector does not resume itself to planting and harvesting and selling it in local markets. It can and it should be bigger and better than that. And I think that Brazil has a strong experience in this regard, in connecting the agricultural value chain with other value chains, especially inside and using technology as a key factor.
Thank you so much. I want to take a step back and bring in Ken, because you mentioned something very important when it comes to skills and leveraging on that for youth. And we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution and digitalizing our economies. Ken, what kind of skills are we talking about? And let's get the experience from Brazil and bring it to Africa, where here with practicability. What kind of skills are we looking at when we're saying, okay, we need to leverage on this to be able to push for development in this particular sector?
Excellent. Yes. So when we look at the future of work, we know that we will need important skills that will be able to ensure that our youth are matched up with some demand. Now, I think what my colleague Joao has said is exactly that in Africa, if we have got to improve our agricultural systems, if we have got to ensure that our youth are part and parcel of the development in the agricultural sector, in the agribusiness, then we have got to skill them. Now, skilling them has to do with ensuring that they are able to cope with technology. So the digitalization part of it is important, because we have got to mechanize this agriculture. We have to make sure that this agriculture is not the old one, a hand and a hoe. In Kenya, they say kilimo biashara. We need to ensure that agriculture is enjoyed as a business. And for us to be able to do that, we have got to have skills that have to do with marketing. We have got to have skills that have to do with production. We have got to have skills that do with storage. We have got to have skills that deal with innovation. And so for us, skills development in the ILO, for example, is part and parcel of developing our youth so that they're able, from the supply side, to be able to get the jobs that they need. At the same time, from the demand side, we need entrepreneurs, we need SMEs that are able to absorb that skill. So it's not just a matter of training them. It's a matter of training them with the skills that are actually marketable, with the skills that will allow them to work in the industry. At the same time, ensuring that the demand side is also looking for the skills that can actually absorb the youth. So skills development is key, Maggie.
I want to bring in Calvin before we take a short break and hear from the audience. You've worked extensively with entrepreneurs in Africa, so through your platform that organizes this annual event, but what barriers are still preventing them from that's an entrepreneurship development? We've had about financial investment, access to markets, technical support, and then we're talking about skills, but what have you heard and where is the gap?
Yeah, thank you very much, Maggie, and thank you very much to all the organizers for this forum today. Really, really appreciate. One of the things that I have to say before I answer your question is one exciting thing about Kenya that actually excited me during this COVID is that when the pandemic, when we were in lockdown last year, we saw so many people coming out actually to be able to, sell stuff, through their personal cars and all that. And it was quite exciting to see, people who even own like Mercedes Benzes, sell tomatoes, onions on that. And so people started realizing the importance of, getting into agriculture and actually start producing food, because some of them actually decided to start producing food in their own, on their own farms. So I think that has been quite an eye opener. And with that, we've seen a lot of demand in terms of training, because we do a lot of training on agribusiness, on business development, on entrepreneurship. And we've seen a lot of people actually having a lot of interest in terms of getting out there and start learning basic agricultural stuff. And one of the things that I also seen a lot is also urban agriculture, where people are starting to even plant small crops on sacks and just on a small area in their balcony and all that. So that's one thing that actually has excited me about this particular pandemic, and how we're seeing young people getting involved in agribusiness, and young people also just wanting to learn about agriculture as well. So I think that has been something that is great. What is the missing link? I think the missing link right now is the need to entice more young people to get into agriculture. And just as my colleague has said, Mr. Ken, in Kenya, we said kilimo biashara. Biashara means it's business. So farming should be business. So you're all not only going to farm because you want to either satisfy your small demand, but you want to also satisfy other people's demand. And because Africa, food security is still a very big challenge. It's still going to be a very big challenge. And I know that is why we need to have more young people into that. And so I think we still need a lot of skills. Skills are going to be very, very key. We still need a lot of advocacy on young people, not only relying on white collar job, but then getting involved in agriculture, in a different form of agriculture. Not only, yes, I know technology agriculture is really, really key, but then also involving in hands-on agriculture, where you can have a small farm, plant something, go through the process, of, planting, harvesting, and all that kind of stuff. So I think we just need a lot of advocacy for us to have more young people get involved in agribusiness. And I think with that, we'll be able to solve, Africa challenging food security problem. Thank you.
Why don't we bring in an entrepreneur before we get to the audience? Fatoumata, they've mentioned financing, funding, and what is missing. Does this really cut it for you, working with entrepreneurs in these countries?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so many interesting things have been mentioned. One repeating thing is the need to enhance the knowledge, skill sets, and technical capacity for youth in order to foster their employability within the agricultural value chains. I think it's very important because there aren't enough capacity building development programs, as well as technical and vocational training, specifically targeting young people living in some rural communities. And most of the time, existing training programs are not always accessible to youth living in very rural communities, and this could even impede employment opportunities for youth. Also, I think partnerships are very crucial in promoting youth transfer of skills, transfer of knowledge, and which is also an important aspect in growing the agricultural value chains. I'll take again my entrepreneur experience. We have partnered with a leading professional of solar pumping systems, as they are the one providing us with the technical support and installation of a solar pumping system. So I think it's very important. Also, there needs to be a synergy between the public and private sectors so as to combine their efforts to provide opportunities for youth entrepreneurship in agriculture and agribusiness. In doing so, private institutions, for instance, could provide like small credit loans. It doesn't have to be a big amount, but just to encourage young people to engage in entrepreneurship within the agricultural sector. Also to support them in the operations of like small agribusiness transformation units. Also to allow them to acquire equipment, raw material, and government could also provide guarantee funds that they could accredit. It's just a matter of allowing young people, like attracting them into the sector. And as one of the panelists said, also it's important to raise awareness in order to explain and inform people on the numerous opportunities that they are in engaging in the agriculture and agribusiness sector. Thank you.
Fatimata, this is quite amazing. And I have to say, it's not too much to ask for all of that. But if I was to ask you, for you, one priority area that you think, because we have a minister here, we have donors and funders, we have Ken from the ILO, where do you think the focus should be put to make it easier for you as an innovator supporting these entrepreneurs down in Cote d'Ivoire, but also to make it easier for businesses like yours?
I would say providing funding for starting capital for new ventures, because sometimes this is where, let's say, in an industry of providing clean technologies, we know that the starting cost for acquiring equipment, shipping some of the raw materials, even setting up administrative tasks on the ground can be very challenging as a young person. So I think it would be to set some more funds who are specifically targeted to provide a starting capital for young people. I think it will encourage more youth to engage in the sector. So that would be a first step.
Amazing, and we've heard from the minister from Guinea. They are doing that through the bank, but we'll be coming back to dip into that conversation. For now, we'll take a very short break and get some questions from the audience. We have a question from Miss Elizabeth Manda Sianga, an agronomist and farmer from Zambia. Take a look.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Manda Sianga, and I am an agronomist and a farmer from Zambia. My question to you is, how are youths effectively engaged in policy making? Hi, my names are Elizabeth Manda Sianga.
Thank you there from Elizabeth, and I think I'll just take this question to the Honorable Minister for now. How do we get youth involved into policy making?
Well, thank you very much. It's first, our president, President Alpha Conde, has made youth and women and the environment the three pillars of his mandate. So everything that we do, we have to ensure that we take those into account. The second is we have public-private dialogue, and through that public-private dialogue, we make sure that people from the civil society, especially the youth, are heard of. And then thirdly is that we have, as I mentioned, these forums where we take into account what the youth are telling us. And I must say they're more and more organized here and make their voices heard. But we have an ongoing public-private dialogue where youth are very much involved.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Can I throw this to you? How do we get, is this really enough, especially for the young people, to help develop the sector?
Important, Maggie, very important. So what we do for the first thing that is really important is when we develop what we call youth employment policies, we ensure that the youth are part of that process. That when you go to countries and support them to develop these policies, there are representatives from youth groups. There are representatives from youth from all over the stakeholdership to make sure that what we put in the employment policies are things that will actually help support, development of the youth in the graduate sector. At the same time, we conduct what we call evidence-based analysis. We do research. We consult these youth. What is it that really you need for you to be able to move or for you to be able to benefit from the agricultural processes? We also have internship programs where we ensure that the youth are included from the beginning in our systems, but also they go back and support their governments to be sure that their voice is heard, so that we make policies that are youth friendly policies. So we do that. Thanks.
I want to bring in Paolo, because there's a question here from one of our viewers who says, I'm Amanda from Brazil. My question is, since many countries in the global south suffer from backward and conservative governments that base their economy on a system of export monocultures, how can we empower young actors to become agents of change that will accelerate the migration to sustainable agriculture?
Yeah. I think that one of the key things to do in terms of reversing this trend of basing economies on monoculture, exporting companies, economies, and relying too much on large-scale agriculture and large businesses is, first of all, changing the perspective on smallholder farming. So in countries from the global south and countries from the global north as well, but mainly in countries from the global south, and this was true, and I think that remains true in Brazil until this day, migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas is seen as developing the quality of life, is seen as something good for people, is seen as the ideal. And it should not be this way. Youth should be incentivized to stay in rural areas and to produce and to become agripreneurs as much as they are to migrate to urban areas and to go into financial services and communication and ICT services. So you need to have policies that give voice to rural youth so they can communicate with other youth as well, especially youth from urban areas, so they can know that rural areas can also offer opportunities for them to engage, to have employment, to create their own businesses, to access credit, and to develop all sorts of activities that they could also do in urban areas. So I think that something that happens here in Brazil that I think that serves as a model is the, as I said before, the integration of sectors, the integration of agriculture with other activities. And I think that this is something that has been flourishing in Africa as well. So you don't have agriculture as something that is isolated or based solely on planting and extracting, but you also have a very large ecosystem of startups, of fintechs, edtechs, renewable energy companies, e-commerce companies, all integrating and all creating jobs. And they're mostly coming from youth people with great ideas, great and innovative ideas. They just need access to a little bit of money so they can start their own businesses. And they just need a little bit of skills in terms of entrepreneurial skills, business skills, or even selling skills, something really basic that can catalyze a whole process of like changing the perspective of not only people from urban areas and conservative families that think that rural is worse, rural is less, but of governments as well, that will, in the end, implement policies to incentivize rural activities.
Of course, there's so much that is being done by organizations like OYA that actually bring us together to share all these experiences, and UNIDO and other partners. And on that, I'd like to invite Ms. Mona from the OYA coordinator to present the OYA program at this particular moment. Mona, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Maggie. Dear panelists, my name is Muna and I'm the coordinator of the OYA program, which is a joint program of UNIDO and FAO, endorsed by the African Union and funded by the Italian Development Corporation. So I would like to share with you what OYA is doing in Africa and how it is creating opportunities for youth in the continent. So the vision of OYA is to accelerate job creation in the agri-food, agribusiness sector in Africa. So it actually works now with 6 countries: Tunisia, Cape Verde, Ghana, DRC, Kenya, and Zambia, and it is expanding to additional countries in Africa, such as Burkina Faso, Angola, Rwanda, and other countries in the future. So OYA envisions youth as agripreneurs, as it has been discussed now by the different panelists, in shifting the profile of a farmer into an agripreneur to interest and attract more youth in this sector. OYA has started its inception phase in September 2020, where all of the partnering countries have formulated their country action plans, their OYA adapted to their proper context. And it aims to mobilize $50 million US over 5 years to help achieve its outcomes. So here it gives us an overview of the different outcomes of OYA. So OYA's objective or goal is to contribute to poverty reduction by promoting decent employment and self-employment opportunities for African youth in agribusiness sector. And it is doing that through the creation of decent jobs on and off farm, because as we know, and as different studies have proved, is that youth are more attracted to the downstream parts of the agricultural value chains, as it has been discussed by the panelists right before. So, and OYA is doing this through 4 outcomes. The first one is employability and self-employment capabilities of youth in agriculture and agribusiness are enhanced. And this comes through skills development, technical skills, soft skills, and entrepreneurial mindset skills. Outcome 2 is more focused on existing and emerging youth-led SMEs, agribusinesses in agriculture, where we have to increase access to finance, to training, to incubation services, to markets, to be able to integrate them in local, regional, international markets. So outcome 2 is more focused on the ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystems and the access barriers. Outcome 3 is agricultural value chains and agri-food systems that create decent employment and self-employment opportunities for youth are strengthened. And through the inception phase in each country we're able to identify value chains, agricultural value chains with high potential for job creation, and to be able to make them more inclusive for youth. Outcome 4 is more on the policy level. Institutional and programmatic frameworks are strengthened at national, sub-regional, and continental levels to support decent youth employment creation and entrepreneurship development in these sectors. And this also, as mentioned before by the panelists, is also strengthened by South-South cooperation between the partnering countries. Now, we do have targets, the OYA program, which is 30,000, at least 30,000 youth are strengthened, enrolled in training, technical and soft skills training, that at least 600 youth-led SMEs are created and supported, and especially that at least 60 public-private development partnerships are established and platforms are inclusive to youth. So OYA's intervention strategy, as you can see through the outcomes that were presented, works at three levels. We have the macro level, the meso level, and the micro level. So at the micro level, we have increasing employability of prospects, employees, and capabilities of self-employed youth. That was mentioned by Ken before, where skills need to match the actual market, the actual employment market, to be able to absorb it, but also promoting entrepreneurial skills for these youth to create their own opportunities of employment. At the meso level is strengthening the competitiveness of targeted value chains and agri-food systems and removing access barriers. So there we work on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And at macro level, that's supporting more youth inclusive policy, institutional programmatic frameworks, and strengthening dialogue platforms. So OYA tries to promote digitalization and innovation, of course, as enhanced by Fatoumata. Innovation, gender, of course, as the targets of OYA program is at least 50% of beneficiaries are women. Entrepreneurship, trying to encourage agripreneurship and entrepreneurship value addition in identified agricultural value chains. And of course, climate change as a transversal theme, making all the enterprises climate smart, resilient to the different climatic shocks that most countries are facing, especially African countries, and their vulnerability to that. So when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, OYA program is quite transversal, but it has specific contributions to these different SDGs that are presented in this slide. So it highlights the central role of agriculture for Africa's economic development, as many countries are agrarian, and food security, and that joins what Minister Curtis mentioned as food sovereignty of the countries. It also emphasizes the need to continuously empower African youth and to include them in the economic growth of their countries through employment creation and sustainable industrial innovation. So thank you very much. And if you need more information on the OYA program, please visit our website that is presented here. Thank you, Maggie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mona. Now, as earlier mentioned, we have such a massive audience from all over the world. And I would like to bring in to see if we can enable the speaker and see if some of the questions coming in online can be asked live. Or I'll read out one question as we test that. This is from Italy. She says, hello, I am Nicola, a Y20 delegate from Italy. I have questions for the panel. One, what policies or initiatives should be prioritized in order to incentivize the involvement of young African people in novel and sustainable agricultural practices and businesses? Why should they choose agriculture over other opportunities? I think Kane and the Honorable Minister can take this on. Again, promoting digitalization, ensuring access to food, and advancing sustainable practices require an unprecedented nexus of policy effort. Also requiring some trade-offs. How do we ensure that young people are not left behind the process? Ken, Fatoumata, you can pick it up if you think this works for you, but I will also direct the first question to Bonavia Maurizio, since this delegate is also from Italy. There you go. We'll start with you, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, can you summarize it again? I think she mentioned what can we do for sustainable agriculture?
Yes, sustainability. Why should they? She says, okay.
Why should they pick up the agriculture? The youth should pick up agriculture.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, what should we do is what we're trying to do in the president's policy is really to put the training. You need to be able to equip people so that they understand what it entails to get into agriculture, to But it's not only, because people do think of agriculture is as only farming. You have a whole value chain in agriculture. It's not only farming. It's processing. It's transporting. It's marketing. So there's a whole value chain in it, and I think it's important that people understand that there are different jobs and there are plenty of opportunities in there, and it's something that's sustainable, because we all, human beings always need to eat, and there will be a market. There will absolutely be a market, because our countries are really increasing in terms of population. I'm just taking ECOWAS, which is the Economic Association of West African States. Currently, we're about 325, 340 million people. In less than a generation, less than 20, in about 20 years, we'll be 500 million people. So you will need to be able to feed that. So there will be a market for it. So it's important that they be training. It's important that we financing to support this, and it's to make it sustainable. We have a lot of innovation that's currently happening, and these innovations are things that we can use to increase the yield, increase the profitability that can be used. Let's just say, the drop irrigation, for example, doing things using more greenhouses. So there are a lot of things in the innovation. We need to spend more time in innovation to enable the youth to attract them into these and to make it more appealing to the youth is to show them concrete examples. And that's what we've been trying to do. And we have a number of concrete examples here in Guinea, and we're showcasing them so that they understand that they themselves can do it. Those that have the capacity to do it, they should do it.
Honourable Minister, sorry, I'm going to keep you again for one more question. We have to agree that there are a lot of people who want to know, especially when it comes to policy, what is being done. And this is specifically to the government of Guinea. He says, Emma, he says, thank you for the event. I have a question for Minister Kashi specifically. We talked intensively on finance and investment today. We may also need to pay attention to environment and biodiversity. How does the Guinea government promote the access and benefit sharing of genetic resources in agribusiness in Guinea, especially considering that the focus on COVID may lead people to ignore biodiversity and genetic resources protection?
I think she's concerned about genetic manipulation and the new crops, and we are very careful with that, because whatever we don't understand, we just have to make sure that whatever we introduce in terms of new practices, that they be well understood. So we have, in terms of environmental rules and regulations, strict rules as to ensuring that we protect what already is being produced here, because we have a wide variety. If you take rice, if you take mangoes, if you take cassava, we have a wide variety, and we have Institute of Research here that are working to ensure that we use those varieties, that we develop them, but using also new innovative ways of farming. These are some of the tools that we're doing, using what we currently have and using the policies that we have in place.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to invite
I have to apologize, because they're calling me. I have to jump on another meeting. So I really want to thank you very much for this debate. I'll be very interested in the OYA program. I want to know why Guinea is not in it. So if you can do the link, I'll be very much interested in that. Please.
I think that we'll leave that to Honourable Minister. Thanks again for joining us. I'll ask the participants to keep shooting these questions on Twitter. The beauty with online is that they can reach out to you directly. Is that okay? So I will ask Nicola Blasetti to unmute and ask your questions live to the panelists.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Nicola, and I'm the Italian Youth 20 delegate, working in the track for sustainability, climate, and energy. My question is, let me just quickly summarize it for you. So promoting digitalization and ensuring access to food and advancing sustainable practices, these three aspects require an unprecedented nexus of policy effort. And sometimes there are some trade-offs. So I would like to hear your opinion about how do we ensure that young people are not left behind in this process of bringing forward digitalization, access to food, and sustainability, and how young people can be involved. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Who would you like to answer this question, kindly?
Sorry?
I'd like.
Please.
Hello? Okay. Ken, would you like to take this on?
I'd like to take it.
I would, but Fatuma wants to take it.
Fatuma,
sorry. Okay, so I wanted to say that actually, how do we make sure that the young people are not left behind? It's to develop programs that will equip young people with entrepreneurial skills, and this can happen even at the school, university levels, where we equip young people with competencies, entrepreneurial skills, and also provide them with the training that actually match the demand of the job market. Also provide them like financial business planning, training, soft skills as well. And it's also important, I think Ken mentioned that, to make sure that in every step of designing policies, we have young representatives, because as we said, the youth represent the majority of the continent. So everything that we build for the future need to include young people if we want to have a successful future for the continent. So we need to make sure that young people are represented. They have a seat at every table, every decision-making table, so that we ensure that their opinion, their voices are heard. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
And I can add.
Sure.
Can I add?
Yes.
Great. So first of all, what I want to say is that the importance of agriculture to Africa is that agriculture promotes economic growth in a way that is different from any other sector. It does that by promoting economic growth, at the same time promoting food security. So we have cases where people are engaging in mining and all these things, and the economy can be seen to be growing, but you find that they are food insufficient. Here we are talking about a sector which promotes GDP, at the same time ensures that the country is food sufficient. Now the youth have to get in there. They have to be involved in a sector that helps to improve food security, a sector that supports economic growth. Now, industrialization and food security should not be looked at as alternatives, that you either industrialize or you go into agriculture. Industrialization is part and parcel of promoting agriculture, so industrialization is a way of ensuring that the sector grows. And therefore, we cannot say it's either or. We cannot be looking at the trade-off of industrialization versus agriculture. We should be looking here at a whole package, that you digitalize because you also want to support the agricultural sector, which needs to be digitalized for it to actually perform the role of the food security providing sector. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ken. I want to bring back Amanda to ask her question live. Amanda, are you able to do this?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Amanda. I'm from Brazil, and I'm representing the Y20 in the Sustainability, Energy, and Climate Crisis track. I'd like to do the same question that I did before. Since many countries in the global south suffer from backward and conservative governments that base their economy on a system of exporting monocultures, How can we empower young actors to become agents of change that will accelerate the migration to sustainable agriculture? Thank you so much.
Paulo, would you?
Sure. I think that one of the things that must be captured in this sense, and this is the role that we have here at the Brazil Africa Institute. This is much of the mandate of the organization, is making sure that countries, both Brazil and African countries, don't need to reinvent the wheel. They don't need to do things that are too complicated to find solutions to this simple problem, because the whole idea is finding good practices that were developed in Brazil a long time ago, or in Africa a long time ago, that can be suitable for different contexts. So for instance, here at the Brazil Africa Institute, we have 2 programs that allow the whole objective is to allow people, from young people from that are entering the workforce, that are entering the formal workforce, to acquire the skills necessary to enhance productivity and enhance employability. So we conduct the youth technical training program and the online professional learning. And there are 2 tools, there are 2 channels by which we capture different good practices from Brazil, be it in different sectors, from the cassava value chain, the mango value chain, cashew value chain, pisciculture, cattle production, whatever it may be. And we try to transmit it through different tools, workshops, and different utilities that can be used by these young people, and incentivize them alongside other sorts of skills, such as business and management skills, commercialization skills, food processing skills, and even social and coping skills that are necessary to maintain a good and sustainable business. And all this aligned with environmental concerns as well, and try to show them that this has been developed here a long time ago, or this has been developed here recently as a new technology, and that it can be easily incorporated with due adjustments. And of course, it's not a matter of unplugging here and plugging there, but it's also a matter of finding the solutions that can be demand driven, that can be replicated to actually incorporate the goods for the challenges that are seen in different African countries. So for instance, this is much of the work that we do here in the Brazil Africa Institute, is trying to find these small answers. And it involves mainly empowering young people with the necessary tools to adopt the sustainable solutions, to adopt this requirements that are necessary to promote social change, and taking them to the context in which they can be applied locally and with indigenous knowledge.
Thank you so much, Paulo. I'll bring in Hannah Hooper to ask her question, but if we keep them shorter and the answers shorter, then we can ask a little bit more questions. If we ask longer questions and longer answers, then we'll only have space for just a few questions. Hannah, you have the floor.
Hello, all panelists. My name is Hannah Hopper. I'm the South African delegate for the Y20 in the Sustainability, Climate and Energy track. My question is, according to the United Nations, access to information, lack of credit, and negative perception around farming is resulting in rapid movement away from rural agriculture by African youth. How do we overcome these challenges to ensure employment and entrepreneurial success in the agriculture sector for youth in the future? Thank you.
Can I see you want to unmute?
I can check it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks for that very important, I think, question. Yes, indeed, access to information is important, and as you have said, without information, it will hinder, entrepreneurs or people's, participation in agriculture. The answer is very simple. We must be deliberate in our policy-making process. We must ensure that we give out information as much as possible to the stakeholders. So this is information can be given from the government ministries, can be given from the private sector, can be given by the NGOs, can be given through school curriculum. So we must make sure that we have an integrated process, that we actually reduce the information asymmetry, which of course does affect people engaging in agriculture. Lack of credit, yes, this will always be something that will be there, but there are innovations that are important to be put in place. For example, credit guarantee schemes that actually can guarantee that the youth are able to access this credit without the banks having an anticipated risk of loss. And we have seen in different countries that this has worked. I will give an example of Kenya, where credit guarantee schemes have actually worked very well. Farming as a distractor, people thinking that I can't go into the field, I can't put on boots, the question is, or the solution would lie in ensuring that we mechanize this agriculture, we make it attractive in the sense that people can still go into it without thinking about the traditional way of doing it, but doing it with technology. And the youth are always interested in technology. We have seen this in other parts apart from Africa, where the youth are getting into agriculture because it has been mechanized, because it has been digitalized. We need to do the same. We need to digitalize it here, so that people can now think that going into agriculture is also as important as going into any other sector. Over to you, Maggie.
Maggie, can I be able to add something pretty short? Yeah, so one of the things that I think African youth need to focus on is also just self-drive, because at the end of the day, we're not only focusing on agriculture for you to most likely make money, but even consumption, because if I can actually produce my own vegetables, then I will actually reduce the chances of going to the market. And so I will make that available for somebody else who'd like to buy. And so let's also remember the aspect, like I'm just going to grow it for my own consumption as well. That doesn't really mean that I have to, grow it for sale or something like that. And another thing is that, apart from looking at agriculture as either commercial and all that, we can also look at it as part of our day-to-day life, despite someone being a pilot or maybe someone being an economist or a researcher. Back in your mind, you know that at least I need to do something, either keep some cows or maybe I'm going to do some small farming aside. So that's actually going to be the routine. That is not only like, oh, I have to leave everything that I'm doing to just focus on agriculture. But apart from whatever I'm doing, if I'm in a technology company in telco, but back at home, I'm actually doing a small farm, acre or something, just to be able to enhance productivity. And again, we're also looking at a healthy nation where each country wants their citizens to be able to live healthy. And the only way we can live healthy is us planting our own stuff, like at least learning to grow our own vegetables and whatever form of food that we need to consume. So I think that should be more self-driven for young people to be able to actually get more involved in agriculture.
I will just now move on because we have limited time, but I would like to ask if anybody would like to add on this, or we move on to the next question, which is from Thomas from Argentina. Thomas, would you like to ask this live? Hello, Thomas.
There we go. It was not on, the mic was off. Thank you, Ms. Mutesi, and thank you all. I would like to remark my pride on seeing an African and a South American panel that reflects the interests, the concerns, and the needs of the Global South in an important event like this. My question especially goes to both Mr. Shawa or Ms. Luby, but can be answered by anyone really. As it has been mentioned, 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, so we have a young continent. What role do you think youth can play in generating regional value chains within Africa, especially in the sectors that you have mentioned in your speeches, taking into account the recent African Continental and Free Trade Area? And to be more specific, many multilateral organizations or regional organizations such as UNCTAD, the OECD, but also ECOWAS and the South African Development Commission have stressed the importance of generating youth communities, a sense of community, a regional community amongst young generations between different African countries. So in this regard, how can the economic outlook and the sustainable outlook can help unfold a sense of a regional young community within Africa? Thank you all once again.
Thank you, Ken. I think you should jump on this.
I think this is great. I mean, a very important question, yeah. Particularly that it talks about the African Continental Free Trade. For the African Continental Free Trade Area to be successful, everyone has to be on board. For a community, for a region, for a continent like Africa, where of course the dominance is the youth, then we are simply we can say without thinking too much that the youth have got to be part of this. So for me, it is important that individual governments enact rules and legislation that supports the youth involvement in the regional trade. So one thing that is really crucial is that there's no success that can be attached to the African Continental Free Trade Area if we do not have labor mobility. So are the youth allowed to move from one corner, from Rwanda to Nigeria, without the problems that we already have in terms of requirements, and all those impediments or barriers to access the different countries and the different opportunities? So for me, it starts with the countries, because the AFCTA will not work just like that. It needs preconditions, and these preconditions have to be made by the countries themselves. The countries have youth agenda. They have youth employment policies. They have youth agricultural society that they want to promote. They should engage with the different countries and ensure that the regional integration that involves youth. This could be youth entrepreneurship. This could be products produced by the youth to be supported to move the goods, but also to move the labor from one point to another. To me, there's extra policy needed for this to happen. Over to you.
We have had so many questions. I do not know how to handle them, but we're going to take one last question. Is Chen live? Chen, can you hear me? Are you able to ask your question? Okay, I think we can have them. But can we have Hannah Hopper for another question? She has another question. She says, is burning. I just need to go out to the panelists. Hannah, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. My question is, what support is being provided to African youth in their entrepreneurial or employment journey post-agricultural training? Thank you.
Can go to all of us. Bonavio, are you able to take this on? Because I know you've worked closely with a lot of youth and entrepreneurs from within West Africa. Paolo, are you able to take this on with the work you've done with the African countries in terms of supporting and bringing continents together? Is this something you could answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think that with the whole idea of South-South cooperation and this partnerships in agricultural development and training programs is that it enables the people to walk by themselves, enable youth to walk by themselves. And the role, I see the role of South-South cooperation as being in the midterm between short-term interventions and long-term interventions. While long-term interventions and short-term interventions should be the responsibility of governments in order to mitigate crises and lay the foundations for youth to thrive with their own entrepreneurship and their own jobs. South-South cooperation, it's right in the middle, and we try to transmit this knowledge to people in a sustainable way, so in a way that can be replicated and even after the end of training programs, or even after the end of the knowledge sharing opportunities. But with limited resources comes limited opportunity for intervention. So it is quite hard for countries to maintain a longer term collaboration in order to sustain this this follow-up and sustain this maintenance of the rural of the youth that had been trained for a longer period. So this is I see this as one of the main gaps in terms of this South-South cooperation initiatives that we at the Brazilian Africa Institute have, and other organizations do as well. Because there needs to be a strong linkage between the programs that are being implemented to train young people to share this knowledge, and governments on the other side coming with the longer term support in the form of credit, as we said before, in the form of fiscal incentives, in the form of facilitation to open new businesses, and etc. So this I see as one of the main gaps, the lack of a linkage between these two spheres, in which you have like the targeted interventions, but that lack the necessary support from local entities and governmental agencies to have spillover, to have multiplier effects in the longer term.
Thank you so much, Paul. I think I'll bring in Mona, because I know Oya is also doing a lot of work in regards to supporting farmers. Mona, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. So once youth are trained in agriculture, there are two separate paths. So the first path would be the classic path of employability. So their skills need to match the needs of the market, and the market needs to grow at the same time, because even if we do have the private sector and many industries that can employ, most of them cannot. So the policies need to present incentives to these private sectors to be able to absorb a certain number of youth employees. And that also goes through investment, subsidies, incentive strategies, as I mentioned, that would encourage them to take on youth that are freshly trained or freshly go out from their schools. That's one thing. And then the second path would be these trained youth, agriculture training, will they go for production? So that comes with land access, etc. Or would they go for value addition, creation as agripreneurs, creation of small agribusinesses for value addition of certain products? So that also involves investment, financial resources. Programs such as Oya program are working into removing access barriers, either to training, to support incubation services that are provided specifically for agribusinesses, agricultural MSMEs, but also the possibility for them to access financing, investments from business angels, venture capitals, from banks, loans, etc. And also access to markets. And as mentioned before, this ability to create links between different countries, South-South cooperation also goes through access to different markets, and also knowledge transfer between these young entrepreneurs or these young trainees that enter the employment market or enter the entrepreneurial ecosystem, to try to share between them best practices and lessons learned is also very important. Thank you, Maggie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mona. So we've taken lots of questions, but I'm going to direct this last question to Calvin and Fatoumata. He says he's anonymous, but he asks, what platforms are you using to engage African diasporas, especially those ones outside the continent, to make them use their skills too, considering the lack of proper communication between them and the diplomatic missions organizations in their countries of residence and later inclusion to African opportunities? Calvin, you've worked with a lot of youth through different platforms. I would leave the floor to you. And Fatoumata, I know you work within the continent and obviously outside the African continent. So let's just take this as the last question, and then we'll see how best to use the remaining few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maggie, for that. And thank you so much for the participants and also for wonderful questions that have been streaming in. So every year we actually host our annual conference called Africa Summit on Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And we have a lot of focus on diaspora. And basically we bring in diasporas in terms of investment opportunity. So because we find that most of the diasporians actually are looking forward to investing back at home. So they're looking for different opportunities that they actually can be able to take advantage of. So for us, I think the best thing is that if you'd like to reach out to us, and we'll be glad definitely to connect you to different platforms. We work very closely with ADIFE, which is African Diaspora in Europe as well. So that's also a diasporan organization that brings especially young diasporians in Europe. And we work also with quite a number of different organizations. For example, Women in Europe, also African Women in Europe as well is an organization that also we work very closely with. So definitely, if you'd like to reach out and also connect as a diasporian, kindly feel free to be able to reach out to me, or be able to reach out to the organizers, and I'm sure they'll be able to reach out to me, and I'll be able to connect you with or give even a bigger platform as well. So thank you.
Okay, so as it comes for me, we know that young people are most on social media. So I sometimes organize interview, like I have a platform where I conduct direct interview with young African, it's called Young African Leaders in Energy and Sustainability series. This series is mainly targeted at young people who are promoting sustainable energy practices across the continent. So during that series, I interview live young people from different countries. I've interviewed people from Uganda, from Benin, and so on. So basically, it's to allow other young people to actually raise awareness of what young people can do on the continent, and also encourage young people to be involved into sustainable energy practices. And I'm very involved into youth organization at the international and also at the national level. So at the international level, I'm into the UN Major Group for Children and Youth, where we have different platforms during which they allow us to raise our voice and give our opinion at international fora, summits, conferences. I think it also helped to provide information and also bring awareness on showing also the work of what young people can do. And I, again, as I said, I use like all my social media platforms to engage with young people across the world, whether it's from different countries of Africa or around the world. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. Now, obviously, we can go on for hours while, exploring different ways to leverage on our agriculture for development and growth of our economies. But unfortunately, we have run out of time. Now, it's very clear that the agriculture sector has many opportunities for African economies. No wonder there are large amounts of untapped agricultural land that could be used in increased production. Some estimates have ranged from 400 million hectares to 840 million hectares of land. And yet still we have to digitalize and create sustainable ways to develop the sector. So I am ending this by giving each one of you 1.5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, as we wind up, to give us your closing remarks. One, how do we create sustainable ways, and what role do younger generations play in supporting the sector? But what do you foresee in the future? Whichever works for you in that way, you can take it on with 1.30 seconds. I'll start with you, Calvin.
I think for me, it's quite direct that we need to focus a lot on research. So young people need to do their research in terms of what kind of either agricultural activity, either crops or animals, whatever form of agriculture they want to get involved in. So let them be able to do research, so that actually that will help them either increase their produce or actually do very well in that particular sector. So research is very key. Another thing is that be self-motivated to have food security.
I think we've lost Calvin. Fatoumata?
Yes, thank you. So one important thing to note is that the agricultural sector in Africa employs a significant part of graduates from any qualification. Also, food systems are increasing, production systems diversify and adapt to new market challenges. And so there's an urgent need to provide efficient mechanisms to allow youth to acquire more competencies, knowledge, technical training, and adequate financial resources to ensure the effective participation in the growth of the agricultural sector and therefore allow youth to contribute to the economic development of their countries.
Paolo?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for all of you for your contributions. And I would like to finish by saying that for me, there needs to be a change in mindset. That is key, in mindset. So first, by changing the mindset of young people and families to see rural areas and see rural activities and agriculture as being something good, and being agripreneur as being a career that someone should seek to achieve a sustainable economy. Changing the mindset of governments to separate adequately the large-scale agriculture and the small-scale agriculture and focus small-scale agriculture and giving opportunities to youth and women to thrive in this context, and a change in mindset of international organizations and international partners to seek South-South cooperation as key to unlocking the exchange of good practices and the exchange of solutions between countries, because this is what works, and this is what is cost effective to reduce the burdens of seeking solutions for things that are already solved in different contexts but that people don't know of.
Thank you so much, Paolo. Ken, what would be your closing remarks?
So my closing remarks, Maggie, first of all, basic things first. We must make sure that our curriculum is good enough to incentivize the youth into agriculture. That people at the beginning of their school or their schooling are already interested in this sector. We should do that. Secondly, I think we need to develop role models in agriculture. People should be able to see that so and so is in this agriculture and has gained 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I take this route, I will also end up there. We must develop role models, what others used to call chaebols in those days. But also, more importantly, we should not just pay lip service to the idea of access to credit. I think this is crucial. They have got to access capital, and we must make sure that governments have this important policy, whether through domestic investments, foreign investment, or whatever policy, just to ensure that the youth are able to get that important capital, those resources that are important for them to engage in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists and everybody that has joined us, who has been a part of this conversation today. I would like to note out something. Previously, we've had conversations of how the average age of a farmer is 60 years, which has actually changed over the years. It goes to the workforce being between 32 to 39 years. Also being evident to us that there is an opportunity, either as an innovator or, as Calvin, as the middleman who brings them together, or, as an investor who puts in the money, and researcher. One of the things that everybody has touched on as we were closing was education, research, and mindset. And with that, you have assured us that we have an amazing future in agriculture, and this we can bet our development and growth on it. Thank you so much for making time to speak to us. Thanks for your amazing insights into this. To the delegates and the viewers from all over the world who joined in online, thanks a lot for making time. And we wish you a very wonderful evening and afternoon. Mona, do you want to say something before I close it?
Yes, please. I'll just turn off my camera connection. So I just wanted to say that the OYA program is ready to work with its partners, top down with policymakers and bottom up with young networks by putting youth at the core of its action. And that OYA is contributing in creating a movement of engaged youth Africans by providing them with relevant opportunities that they can seize, hence its name, Opportunities for Youth in Africa. So I'm inviting everybody to join this movement and of course, keep in touch with us to work together towards this goal. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, over to you, Maggie.
And on that note, I'd love to close this particular session. Have a very wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.